John, what are your memories of the day of the Hillsborough disaster?
Horrific, aren't they, really? We weren't there, so many of us, myself included, but you feel like you were when you've read so much and said so much all these years on. I remember not being at work, but seeing problems on the television as the disaster began to unfold, and as soon as I heard that there were casualties, reported fatalities, I rang into my old colleague Bobby Burns, who was on the news desk that Saturday, and said, "Can I help?" And he said, "Yeah, if you can get up there, John, please do." Jumped in my car and drove up to Sheffield. Got to the ground about 5 o'clock. I can remember, obviously, an awful lot of supporters by that stage were coming back in the opposite direction to Liverpool and to Merseyside, and the looks on the faces of the people in the car told you that something especially awful and dreadful had happened. When I got to the ground, I remember speaking to a man from Sheffield who was just sat outside at a gate, left a bunch of flowers, and he was just sitting there shaking his head, and I asked him why he was there, and he said, well, he wasn't a football fan particularly, but he was from Sheffield, and he just heard what had happened and felt so dreadfully sorry. He needed to come down and pay his respects. Then in the evening, I found the place where the families who were waiting to hear whether their loved ones had lived or died had been assembled. It was, I think, the Hillsborough Boys Club, and I asked permission to go in and speak to them, and the clergyman who was in charge of part of that operation came to the door and said, "Yes, come in." And I remember saying to him, "Well, do the families know that I'm here? Do the families know that you're taking me in?" Because I didn't want to go in and intrude on their obvious grief and concern at that stage. He went back in, told them, the families, that the Echo, a reporter from the Echo was there. Did they want him allowed in? And they all said, "Yeah, very much, bring him in." And I felt so sorry for the families sitting around at tables. People were giving them tea and sympathy, taking a register of names and details and all the rest of it. But at that stage, obviously, those poor people didn't know whether supporters, relatives who'd gone to the game had lived or died. But by 7, 8, 9 o'clock, whatever time it was, I was there. Clearly they'd heard nothing and feared the worst, and many of those families got the worst possible news, and we all know what has happened since.
In terms of the immediate aftermath in the city, what was your role in covering that?
Well, I was part of a team of reporters. I mean, Hillsborough obviously consumed the families first and foremost, and the football club, but it consumed the whole city and everyone who was present in it as well. And the Echo office, there was only one story, sadly, very sadly, in town for a week or two, if not longer. I do remember covering funerals out on the Wirral where I was working there. I think the Trainer family, I think they lost 2, if I remember rightly. But a lot of the reporters obviously were out and about covering funerals, speaking to poor relatives who'd seen what should have been a very ordinary day for them and their families turn into a nightmare from hell that they'll never forget. So it was a heavy time, and in particular I remember, of course, the response of this newspaper, the Liverpool Echo, to what the Sun published at the time, and I was very proud of this newspaper, like everybody else who worked for it, and hopefully a lot of its readers at the time. The Echo spoke up for the people of Merseyside in the face of that evil front page that was published by that newspaper. And I think it spoke very properly and very eloquently and very firmly on behalf of its readers, and I don't think I've ever been more proud of the Echo than I was that day. It had to be said. Someone had to speak up for these people, and we did that.